Not every beginning is a new beginning. Some are merely a continuation of another nightmare one that follows you from one continent to another without you even realizing. I used to live in Chicago, in an old building gnawed by cold and dampness. The window never closed properly, and the door creaked with every breath of air. Nights there were deeply unsettling, not because they were loud, but because they were far too quiet. Everything around me was slowly collapsing. My job, my friendships, even my mental health. I became addicted to silence, accustomed to loneliness, and could no longer tell Monday from Friday. Something inside me was dying, piece by piece. I felt like life had stopped. One night, while lying on my worn-out bed, I saw an ad about humanitarian asylum programs in Germany. I didn't think twice. I just wanted to escape not from the place, but from everything I had lived in it. I submitted my papers, I waited, and when I was accepted, I packed my old suitcase and left everything behind, even my memories. I arrived in Berlin in the morning. The city was pulsing with life, but I wasn't looking for life. I was looking for a place to start again. I boarded a random train heading south and sat by the window, staring at the dense forests and the sky covered in heavy clouds. The train finally stopped in a small town. I didn't even know its name. It was nearly midnight, and the air was dense, cold enough to push itself into your chest without warning. The station was completely empty, and the street leading from it was shrouded in fog, as if something along the way didn't want to be seen. I walked without a map, following only my feet. The old houses peeked from between the trees like pale faces, watching me in silence. Every window was shut, and there was no sign of movement. No lights, no sound, only the smell of old dampness inhabiting the place. In that moment, I began to feel like I was the only one in this town, and maybe I wasn't the first to feel that way. I was looking for a place to stay that night, maybe a small hotel or something to take shelter in. The city seemed lifeless, its windows shut, the buildings worn down and aged. The sound of my footsteps on the pavement was the only sound, echoing through the alleys. Then I noticed one of the buildings. It looked old, but there was a glowing sign, motel. It seemed like exactly the place I needed. Its flickering red and yellow lights buzzed weakly. A small parking lot sat empty. The whole place felt slightly eerie. Just one building, sitting alone a bit off the road. I walked closer. The glass door was coated with a thin layer of dust, and the handle felt cold as if it were made of ice. When I opened it, it let out a long, shrill creak. The sound pierced the silence, like it had awakened something inside. I stepped in. The air felt heavier, like it hurt to breathe. The reception area was small, covered in a faded red carpet, with dark stains in the center I couldn't quite identify. There was a small desk and a worn-out couch that looked choked by dust. The smell was strange, a mix of damp wood, old dust, and something else. Something that smelled like mold, but with a metallic edge. I stood there for a moment, looking for someone. Then suddenly, a man appeared behind me. His sudden presence startled me. I hadn't heard any footsteps. I hadn't seen anyone behind me. He was just suddenly there. He stepped forward, walking silently, with simple, soundless strides. He looked directly at me. His gaze was stiff, unnatural, as if he wasn't looking at my face, but at something behind me. He was thin, the skin on his face stretched tightly over his bones, and his smile didn't change. The air around him seemed to compress, as if his presence was sucking the warmth out of the room. Then he spoke, in a low voice that was more of a whisper, yet it pierced through me with strange clarity. "Welcome, sir. Room 9. We've been expecting you." I felt a wave of unease. I hadn't booked anything. I hadn't told him anything. He didn't even know my name. I froze in place, but he held out the key without blinking. It was an old metal key, with the number 9 crudely etched into it. I reached out hesitantly and took it. The moment my fingers touched the key, one of the lights behind him suddenly went out. He glanced back briefly, then looked at me again with the same rigid expression and said, "That happens a lot." I didn't answer his comment, just wanted to know. So I asked, "Are there any other guests here?" He replied without changing his tone, "No one else tonight but you." I started walking down the hallway slowly, step by step, and every creak from the floor felt like it echoed straight into my bones. Silence filled the space, but despite that, something felt wrong, deeply wrong. Something unsettling clung to the air. The hallway felt endlessly long, so long that I started to feel like I might never reach the room. The walls were disturbing, not exactly dirty, but something about them looked unclean in a way I couldn't explain. The lights were dim yellow, the kind of lighting that doesn't brighten anything, just makes everything look uglier. The bulbs buzzed with a constant, irritating hum, and the shadows around me moved in strange ways. Even when I stood still, there were no sounds but my own. No people, no voices, not even the faint hum of a TV from behind a door. I climbed the stairs quietly, my hand gripping the banister. It was coated in dust. When I lifted my hand, I saw its imprint clearly, as if no one had walked up here in months, maybe longer. I stopped in front of my room. Number 9. The door wasn't fully closed, was slightly ajar. I felt like someone had just been inside. I reached out and gently pushed it open, then stepped in. The room was neat and clean, everything in place, but it was freezing. A strange cold, not from the weather, but as if the chill seeped from the walls, from the floor, from everything around me. I tried turning on the heater, but it didn't work. I walked over to the window, tried opening it, but it was sealed shut. I pushed it several times. It wouldn't budge. It felt like it was designed to stay closed. I don't know why, but I felt like I had entered a room I was never supposed to step into, and worse, like I wouldn't be able to leave it. I started looking at the framed pictures on the walls. They were old, some clear, some faded, as if time had wiped their faces away. One picture, in particular, drew me in more than the rest. I stepped closer, and the nearer I got, the more I felt like someone inside the picture was watching me. The eyes in the portrait seemed to follow me. I didn't see anything clearly, just black eyes, but my heart started to pound harder. I felt it. There was something strange in the room, something I couldn't see, but it felt me. The feeling was disturbing and terrifying, so I decided to lie down on the bed. I woke up suddenly. I hadn't really been asleep. My body had surrendered to exhaustion, but my mind stayed alert, watching every movement and every sound. The darkness still filled the room, and the lamp barely lit anything, casting a faint yellow glow that danced on the walls. Everything looked the same, but the atmosphere had changed. At first I thought it was just hallucinations, mere illusions after the exhaustion of travel. But when I closed my eyes a bit, I heard it clearly. Breathing, someone behind the door. It wasn't normal breathing. It was deep, slow, steady and watching. I froze in place. My eyes opened wide. I thought I was imagining things. I leaned forward, slowly approaching the door. My steps made no sound. As I brought my ear closer to the wood, the sound was still there. It wasn't just breathing. There were whispers, unclear words, like someone muttering things I couldn't understand, in a dialect I didn't know, but I could feel them. One moment, everything stopped. I flung the door open with full force. The hallway was completely empty. The dim lights flickered, and the walls seemed taller. Everything looked familiar, but it felt different. I was no longer sure if I was still in the same place. I quickly went back inside. A chill pierced my body, but it wasn't natural cold. It was as if the room itself rejected me. I closed the door, sat on the bed. I was trembling. I looked around. The lamp began to flicker. Once, twice, then suddenly stopped. An indescribable feeling overtook me. It was as if something in the room was moving without sound. Something unseen, but you could feel it. I turned toward the old pictures on the wall. The one with the blurred face. Now, its features had changed. It was looking at me. Yes, looking directly at me, and its features weren't the same as when I entered. I approached. The closer I got, the more I felt a faint heat coming from the painting. My body slowed down, as if someone didn't want me to reach it. But I looked, stared into those faded eyes, and felt like I had seen them before. I could no longer think. I no longer felt safe. I stood up immediately, grabbed my bag, didn't look back, didn't think. I just wanted to get out. I opened the door forcefully and ran into the hallway. My footsteps echoed strangely, not matching my movement, as if someone else was running behind me. I ran down the stairs. Everything grew darker, and the cold grew even stronger. When I reached the reception area, everything stopped. It was empty. No sound. The receptionist was gone. The chair he had been sitting on was overturned. The wall clock, its hands stopped at 3:17, unmoving. I approached the phone, broken. The curtains were closed, and the air was cold, as if the entire hotel had frozen in a single moment, and I was the only one still alive inside. I couldn't take it anymore. I ran toward the front door, pushed it with all my strength, and left that place. I ran. I didn't look back, didn't think, didn't hear anything but the pounding of my heart, and my footsteps echoing across the wet ground. The hotel was behind me, but it felt like a shadow, like it was never really there. Just a grotesque illusion born from my sleep. I stepped into the street, and everything was still. No one, no sound, just a heavy silence, as if it too was waiting for me. I walked without direction, my body trembling from within, the cold seeping into my bones, not just from the weather, but from the fear clinging to me like a second skin. I saw a small park, its trees looking dead though still standing, and the hanging lights above barely glowing. I entered through its old gate and sat on the nearest rusty bench. I couldn't stand any longer. I closed my eyes, and everything around me began to fade. I didn't care. I didn't resist. I just surrendered and slept. I woke with the first rays of light. The air was colder, but the sky had started to open its eyelids. and the silence still wrapped the place, but in a different way, less suffocating. I sat there, alone, watching the empty street, the birds flying in the distance, and people slowly appearing from behind doors and windows. But my mind wasn't here. I was thinking about that night, about the hotel. Was that place even real? Is it on any map? Did I really enter a hotel? Or did I step into something else? Something that doesn't belong to this world? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Big city nights had started to suffocate me. Everything about them felt exhausting. The noise, the same repeating faces, and the relentless work. I needed a simple escape, a short break, even if I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I woke up in the morning without a plan, just a vague desire to get away. I got in my car and started driving with no clear destination. The road stretched out before me as if saying, "Keep going. Don't turn back." I was driving and thinking about nothing, just the silence around me and the tires, tearing into the asphalt with a steady sound, like they were trying to pull me out of my thoughts. As evening approached, the clouds began to sink lower, and fog crept in from all directions, crawling over the windshield as if trying to hide everything behind it. I entered a small town whose name I didn't even notice, as if it had suddenly appeared out of the mist. Its streets were almost empty, and the old buildings stood like they were waiting for something, or someone. The air turned uncomfortably cold, not normal cold, but the kind that makes you feel like the air itself doesn't trust you. I needed to stop. My eyes were growing heavy with exhaustion, and my mind was urging me to find shelter, any place to sleep. And there, on the edge of town, a small hotel appeared by the roadside. A 2-story wooden building, its light warm but dim, as if shy in the fog. The front was old but clean. The reception window was lit, and behind it, a shadow moved slowly. It didn't look fancy, but enough for one night. I turned off the engine and got out. The silence outside was suffocating. Even the sound of my car door closing felt too loud. I walked toward the wooden door and paused for a moment before opening it. What I didn't know then was that this night wouldn't be for rest. It would be the beginning of something colder than the cold itself. I entered the hotel. The bell above the door rang, and soft footsteps approached from behind the desk. There was an old man, gentle-looking. His eyes were tired, but they held a strange warmth. He smiled at me as if he had known me before, and said in a calm voice, "You arrived just in time. Only one room left, number 4. I nodded without saying much. I was exhausted, and all I wanted was a bed and a blanket. He reached into the drawer and pulled out an old key, then glanced very briefly down the side hallway, specifically toward the room next to the one he had given me. I didn't comment, but that glance, something about it stuck in my mind, even for a moment. He handed me the key and said, "The maid will be here in the morning. If you need anything, the phone works." I thanked him and slowly climbed the wooden stairs. The floor creaked with each step, not annoyingly, but as if it were breathing with me. Room number 4. I opened the door. The room was better than I expected. A clean bed, a window overlooking the back garden, a simple wooden table, and even a small lamp beside the bed. But the first thing that caught my attention was the wall to my left. It wasn't thick. Not at all. It felt like two rooms had been glued together with a fragile wall, and any small sound from the other side would easily seep through. I put down my bag, lay on the bed, and closed my eyes. The first hours of the night passed in complete silence. No sound, no movement, not even the echo of cars from outside. Then midnight approached. Suddenly, knocking. Soft, just twice. Then stillness. I sat up slowly on the bed. The knocking was coming from the adjacent wall, from room number 5. The world went silent, and I waited. Then 3 more knocks, a little louder this time, but no footsteps, no voices, no whispers. I stood, approached the wall, placed my ear against it. Nothing, absolute silence, but not the comforting kind. I returned to bed, told myself maybe someone had just checked into the room next door, or maybe the wind. Maybe I was imagining things. But just before I closed my eyes, one last knock, then everything stopped. And though everything quieted, I couldn't sleep. On the 4th night, I could no longer sleep. I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling and the wall beside me. Waited. No sound came, no knocking. But the silence itself pressed against my ears, as if I was waiting for something that knew exactly when to appear. I started doubting myself. Was all of this real? Had loneliness and anxiety pushed me to imagine sounds? Was room 5 just an ordinary room, and I was the one burdening it with things it didn't possess? But I couldn't find comfort neither in the wall, nor in the behavior of the staff. There was something here that can't be said, can't be explained, but it could be felt. And on the 5th day, I decided to leave. I woke up early, packed my bag, and looked at the place one last time. I stepped into the hallway, and the air was heavy, as if the walls themselves were breathing. I headed for the stairs, and my eyes did not intend to look left, toward room 5, but I saw it. Room 5's door, open, not fully, just halfway, as if someone had opened it for me, but didn't dare finish. I stopped. I stood there, bag in hand, and it felt like my heart looked before my eyes did. Inside was total darkness. Not ordinary darkness, but a thick blackness, like frozen smoke. Then the voice came. The same voice. Exactly the same. Soft, broken, very closer than ever before. I'm here. I didn't move. I didn't look any closer. I didn't say a word. I turned around and walked. I left the hotel without looking back. I didn't say goodbye to anyone, didn't open my mouth. On the road, I drove without direction, staring at the road ahead, but my ears were hearing something else. That voice, as if the wall was still behind me, as if someone was still waiting for me there. I no longer knew if I had truly left, or if I was now just a part of that place, reshaped like those before me. When I started working at that old hotel, I didn't expect to encounter more than dusty rooms and unmade beds. I was just a cleaning staff member dressed in my blue uniform, pushing my supply cart each morning, moving between floors like any new worker trying to avoid trouble. The job was simple, the routine always clear. Rooms opened at 8 a.m., cleaned and arranged as required, then closed to await incoming or passing guests. The hotel was quiet most of the time, with few guests, and the staff didn't talk much, only about daily tasks. I didn't really know anyone, but I didn't need to. The first week, everything seemed normal, until I noticed room 2. That room was never listed among those scheduled for cleaning, which isn't unusual in itself. Some rooms stay vacant sometimes. But the strange part was that every morning, I'd pass by and notice something that didn't change. The door was always fully closed, but the water meter showed clear usage, enough for daily use. At first, I thought maybe someone was just using the bathroom, maybe a staff member. I didn't know, but it didn't stop at water. One day, as I pushed my cart through the second floor, I noticed the bathroom towel, which is always hung on the rack behind the door, was suddenly draped over the chair near the bed. That might seem like a trivial observation, but I was sure it hadn't been there the day before. The next day, I found the bed cover arranged differently, pulled tight, like someone had slept in the bed, then tidied it up themselves. No cleaning had been requested for the room, and no registered guest had entered it. That's when suspicion started to creep in. I waited until lunchtime and went to the front desk. The old man there was going through some papers. His name was Hartman, a quiet man who didn't speak much. I said casually, "Room 207. Who's in it? I haven't seen it cleaned for days, but it seems like someone's using it." He looked up quickly, as if he hadn't expected the question. Then he picked up the registry book and flipped through its pages. He stopped at a certain page, then said, "Room 207. No one's in there. It's been vacant for about 2 weeks." He added after a pause, "Why do you ask?" There was something odd in his tone, like he wanted to close the subject. I said, "It's just, the water gets used every day and the towels keep showing up in different places." He looked at me again, silently, then closed the book calmly and said, "Maybe one of the staff is using it by mistake. But don't worry, it's not your concern. Just focus on the rooms you're assigned, all right?" I nodded and didn't say anything else. But inside, something started to stir. Something cold and strange. The next day, I started watching room 207 with different eyes. I no longer passed by it casually. I began to stop in front of it for moments, watching the door, watching the floor, looking for anything, any sign. Every hour I would come back, and nothing. The door was tightly shut. No one entered, no one exited. But the night was different. After midnight, when the whole hotel slept, I began to hear it. Footsteps, soft footsteps, walking inside room 207, slowly, stopping near the door, then turning back. Sometimes I heard a faint dragging sound, like someone pulling something heavy, or as if their foot was injured. Everything was happening in there, without anyone ever appearing. One night, while I was passing through the hallway, I looked at the door and saw it move. It didn't open. It just moved slightly, then slowly closed again. I wasn't near it, and there was no draft, but it moved. That night, I decided to go in. I snuck in early in the morning when the hallway was empty. I carried the keys as part of my job, and no one was there to stop me. I opened the door, slowly. The room was clean, to clean. The bed was tightly made, as if someone spent half an hour fixing it. The pillows placed precisely. The curtains pulled perfectly. No dust, no mess. But the smell wasn't normal. It was a mix of strong disinfectant and another scent, choking like mold, but warm, as if it was seeping from the walls themselves. I stepped further in. On the bed, there was a towel, damp, freshly used. I entered the bathroom. I opened the faucet. The water was hot, as if someone had used it just minutes ago. But the room was completely empty. No one. I left feeling something I couldn't explain. Not fear, but a sense that the room itself was watching me. The next day, I was cleaning a room at the far end of the hallway when I saw him. From the corner of my eye, I saw someone quietly walk past the hallways and his body thin, his steps silent, and he headed straight toward room 200. I froze in place. Then I moved quickly, ran after him, reached the door within seconds. But it was locked, and the hallway completely empty. I went back to the reception, shaking, and asked my colleague to open the security footage. He did. He looked at the screen. Then his face darkened. He said quietly, "The camera stopped recording in this hallway exactly during last night." I looked at the screen. A black screen. No movement, no signal, nothing. Exactly at the moment that man appeared. On the second to last day, while I was finishing my shift, I was quietly sweeping the hallway, trying to appear normal, though my heart was anything but. The old housekeeper passed by me, the one who never spoke to anyone, never smiled, never showed any interest in what was around her. But this time, she stopped beside me. She didn't look at me. She stared silently at the closed door of room 27 for a long moment, then whispered in a hoarse voice, "That room, my boy, there used to be a young man working in it. A cleaner like you." I froze in place. She continued, without changing her tone, "He suddenly disappeared years ago. We never found his body, nor his clothes, not even his ID, as if he dissolved into the air of the room." I looked at her and saw that she was trembling. She whispered fearfully, "Since that day, the room has been left empty. No one books it, no one enters it. But the strange thing is, we kept finding the bed made every morning, the towels folded, the bathroom clean, as if someone is still working there." Then she walked away, slowly, without saying another word. That night, I didn't sleep. Something inside me was stronger than fear, something like deadly curiosity. And at midnight, I took my keys and stood in front of room 207. The air in front of it was colder than anywhere else in the hallway. I opened the door, quietly. The room was tidy, everything in place. The bed was clean, the towels folded, not a speck of dust in any corner. But there was something strange. The smell of the place, an uncomfortable mix, strong disinfectant with something like mold, a scent that clings to your chest and stays. I walked slowly toward the bathroom. Suddenly, the door slammed shut, as if someone stood behind it. I stepped back, my heart nearly stopping. I opened the door quickly. No one. But there was something on the mirror. Writing, formed from the foggy steam that had accumulated. I hadn't touched it, hadn't breathed near it, but it appeared before me. Clearly, "Thank you for not exposing me." I stood there in complete silence. No movement, no sound, only the flickering yellow light and the words etched in the glass. The next morning, I didn't wait for anyone to ask me anything. I walked into the office, handed over the keys, and submitted my resignation without explaining a thing. I didn't speak to anyone, not management, not the police, not even my family. I kept everything to myself, simply because I didn't want anyone to think I'd lost my mind. But I kept one photo. A photo I took with my phone from inside room 207. Why, I don't know. Maybe to make sure later that I hadn't imagined it all. But every time I look at that photo, every time I open it at night, I feel like there's a faint face appearing in the corner. A face watching me quietly, as if it's saying, "I'm still here." The guest never left, because simply, he was never a guest to begin with. I work the night shift as a front desk clerk in an old hotel. The place is quiet most of the time, may be boring for many, but I've grown used to it. Not much happens during the night shifts. Few guests, some never leave their rooms all night, and others come and go without anyone noticing. I knew every corner of that hotel, the doors that creaked just slightly, the elevators that always took too long to arrive, the walls that held behind them a lifetime's worth of stories. But the one thing no one ever talked about was the 5th floor. People assume the hotel only has 4 stories, but in truth, it has 5. The 5th has been completely closed off for years. The staircase leading to it has no sign, and the elevator doesn't stop there, as if it's been deliberately erased from existence. 7 years ago, there was a fire in a room on that floor. The cause of the fire remains unclear, and all the records ever said was electrical malfunction. But it wasn't a normal incident. Someone died that night. Not from the fire itself, but because they were trapped inside their room and no one could open the door. Strange sounds were heard from that floor. Some staff reportedly passed out from the smoke lung before the fire reached them. Since that night, the entire floor was shut down. The wiring was pulled, power cut, phone lines disconnected, and the back door leading to it was sealed with red tape, still hanging there to this day. Years passed, and no one dared go up. The new owner refused to renovate, and management said, word for word, "We're keeping it closed," out of respect for what happened. But what no one ever knew was that the floor, despite its silence, was never truly empty. The following night weighed heavier than usual. The air in the hotel lobby was unnaturally still, like the whole building was holding its breath. As I reviewed the security footage from the previous night, I noticed something strange. Every camera was functioning perfectly, except for the one positioned near the stairwell leading to the 5th floor. At exactly 3:13 a.m., the image glitched, blurring into static, accompanied by a faint, low-pitched hum, then returned a few minutes later, showing nothing. But I heard something. In the silence of the hallway, deep into the night, there were footsteps. They came from the stairwell, slow, steady, as if someone was either coming down or going up. Every time I approached the heavy iron door to the stairs, the sound would stop. I repeated it again and again. Each time I got closer, silence. By the 4th night, I couldn't take it anymore. I took the flashlight from under the front desk and stepped toward the stairwell door. My hand was ice cold as I slowly opened the metal door. Its rusty creak thundered through the quiet. The first thing I noticed was the dampness, then a faint scent, something like old ash. I began ascending the steps to the 5th floor. Each step creaked gently beneath me, and the higher I went, the stronger the scent of fire became. When I reached the top, I found a door leading to the corridor slightly ajar, as if it was waiting for me. I pushed it open carefully, and the decayed hinge wailed like a sick animal. The hallway was pitch black, but the beam of my flashlight revealed the walls, charred black. The fire's scars were still raw, as though time had refused to touch this place. The ceiling was scorched. Some windows remained shattered, and the silence was absolute. It felt like the floor didn't breathe anymore. I continued down the hall until I saw it. Room 501. The number was still visible, but scratched, crooked, and beside it, written faintly with blackened fingers on the wall, "Don't knock." He never left. I stood there for minutes, feeling the light around me dim, and the hallway behind me no longer felt the same. But I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just stared at the door until I heard a whisper from inside. "You came back." I was about to turn back, about to flee this cold floor that felt like an open grave. But just as I stepped back, I heard the phone, an old ring, metallic, coming from inside room 501. A sound that shouldn't exist, because the line wasn't even connected. I pushed the door gently. It wasn't locked, just slightly open, as if someone had left it that way on purpose. The room was drowned in shadows, My flashlight revealed a thick layer of dust covering the furniture, but there was one thing untouched by it. The phone, an old black rotary phone, ringing loudly on a small table near the shattered window. I stepped closer, stretched out my trembling hand, and lifted the receiver. At first silence, then a whisper, my own voice. It spoke in a cold, flat tone. "You shouldn't have come." Then the line went dead. I don't know how long I stood there, but I descended the stairs as if running from something chasing me, avoiding even the thought of looking back. I ignored the voices that started echoing in my head again. When I reached the lobby, I sat behind the desk, looked at the main phone. It was silent, but I didn't trust it. In the morning, I handed over my paperwork and resigned without a word. I refused to explain. I didn't want to talk. I didn't even want to stay another second. And since that day, I've never stepped foot in any hotel after midnight. But sometimes, I still see them, those who remain on the 5th floor. And every time I hear an unexpected phone ring, I freeze, and I'm terrified that I might hear my voice again.